5, 4, 3, 2.
All right, and right off the bat, we jump into the wrong screen. I'm doing great tonight. Hey, everybody, how are you? Give me a second here, and I'll pull up my ugly mug so you guys can see me. Got a lot of stuff I want to go through, but this isn't one of them. We've got to get a screen that I can actually talk from. So there we go. All right. How everybody? Hey, everybody, how you doing? Jeff Colson, junior hockey advisor. It is Sunday night, starting a little early. I got excited. I got a lot of information I wanted to cover. Most people are getting done with their seasons or are done with their seasons, except for juniors. Congratulations to all of you that had a good run. I got a chance to see a lot of people at nationals. Got combines going on. Things are still going on and exciting. What a great Division I national championship, Frozen Four. Unbelievable talent. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. The national championship game for Division III hockey. Incredible game, a lot of fun. Battle of attrition, just two super talented teams. That was Adrian and Geneseo battling it out. And congratulations to Adrian on their first national championship. It was fun to watch. Across the board, Denver, good job. Just Minnesota, Michigan, all these great programs. So tonight, we got two things I want to discuss, two things I want to work with. First, let me tell you again who I am. I'm Jeff Colson. I run Junior Hockey Advisor. Been in this industry for about 30 years. I've been a junior hockey owner for several different franchises. I've been a general manager. I've been a coach. I'm a level 5 certified coach with USA Hockey. Been an NCAA coach and currently work in the Tier 2 level, working as a player development director. So what I bring to the table is how the process works. I try to give you a peek behind the curtain a little bit as much as I can. I also try to help you understand the process, what it takes to move up, what it takes to get to the next level as far as just analytical, common sense, doing the right things and being in the right place as much as possible. Now, it's not always the case. So anyway, that's it. I told you tonight we'd talk about Tier 3. Then we're going to talk about a document that's been floating around. It comes around. There's 3 or 4 of us that post information like this that exist in the social media world. And from time to time, documents come out that give you stats on where players are at, what they're doing, what's it all about. We're going to talk about that. It could be good. It could be bad. I'm not going to get into that yet. You got to stick around for that. But we're going to talk about Tier 3 juniors. You have to ask your questions. You have to throw them up. You got to put them up on your discussion, up on the screen for me so I can pull them up and read your questions. A lot of people, there are 2 things that are hot this last 2 weeks. People asking, hey, what about this document? What about these numbers? What about these NCAA Division I numbers in the document? The other one is, what about Tier 3 hockey? What's going on with the NCDC with this new youth level league they're building below it? And, what's going on with the NA3HL and the EHL? So as promised, and like I told many of you with direct messaging, a couple of you over the last few weeks that have been on this live stream that we do that asked for this, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk a little bit about Tier 3. I need your help, though. If you've got questions, you got to put the questions up because we don't work very well unless there's questions coming in that I can respond to. I want to make sure that I'm catering this to what areas you're really concerned about. So let's talk about Tier 3. Toughest level to get your hands around in junior hockey is Tier 3 hockey. And you say, well, it should be the easiest, right? Because, the USHL jumps out and grabs all their players. The North American Hockey League jumps out and grabs all their players. The BCHL grabs all their players. The AJ grabs all their players. And everything that's left is Tier 3, right? NCDC gets their player. You know what I'm talking about. It's not that easy. And the reason it's not easy is, one, education. Not everybody is fully educated on Tier 3 hockey. There are a lot of people that end up playing Tier 3 hockey that should never have stepped into Tier 3 hockey, either on two ends of the spectrum. One, because they're too good for Tier 3 hockey, or good enough to play at another level. I shouldn't say too good, because there are some great teams at Tier 3 hockey that deserve the players they get and deserve the players they develop, because they went out hard and recruited for players that maybe were off the radar, found good talent, brought them in. I don't begrudge anybody that. But the second thing is, be careful when talking about Tier 3. There's no reason in the world to belittle a league, any league, because they all have merit, okay? What I mean by merit is there's a reason why each league exists. Now, most people know that inside of the CJHL, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, there's 9 separate leagues. There is a weak league. It's the SIJHL. It's the weakest league of all of them. But it has a fantastic group of people that run the league, that coach the league, fan base. There's good things about it. Just because they're not all going NCAA Division I out of the league should not belittle the league or bring it down. There's kids that go out and play youth sport out of that. There's kids that just have a great run in their small Canadian or U.S. city and then decide to just go to college and play ACHA or just hang them up after that. It doesn't mean a thing to me when people slam other leagues. It just doesn't make sense. There's leagues I like and there's leagues I don't like on a personal basis, but I know that every league has merit. Every league has a purpose. So with that said, education is extremely important on understanding, why it's difficult to put your hands around Tier 3 hockey. The vast difference in demographics, the vast difference in budgets, the vast difference in coaching, the vast difference in budgeted recruiting for teams. All these things factor into Tier 3 hockey, and probably more so than any other level of hockey. You are going to get a certain level of player just at a baseline, just because your program breathes at the North American Hockey League or the USHL level, the BCHL level. You're going to get a certain level player at baseline. At minimum, you're going to get at least this level of talent. Well, you really don't know that at Tier 3. You don't know what your level of baseline talent is because it's such a diverse pool of players. Remember, you've got leagues that are huge. I'm not even sure what the USPHL Premier is at right now. Let's pull that up and I'll take a look at it while we're speaking and see how big the Premier is. But I bet you it's at least 60 teams. And oh my gosh, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. So 20, 40. Yeah, it's not quite 60, but, it's well over 60. It's closer to 70. If you know the exact number, let me know. I can't take my shoes off and do this broadcast at the same time to count. So I'm not sure exactly what the number is, but it's well over 60 teams. Okay, when you've got a league that big, coast to coast, north and south, east and west, to control and have quality control over the level of players and to be able to actually campaign for players and market and recruit players in your own market, that's extremely tough. A lot of these programs are the third team inside of the NCDC, the second team inside the NCDC. The elite team would be the third team. But it becomes extremely difficult to recruit and to find good players. So when you do find good programs, you always hear me talk about if you're going to play in the NA3HL, if you're going to play in the EHL, if you're going to play in the USPHL, it's extremely, extremely important to try to reach out and find the top team the highest level team you can play for. It's not good enough to be in a league if you can play for a better team. It works at every single level. As much as people don't want to hear this part of it, recruiters, college coaches, other junior programs always look at the top first. They always spend time with the top first. Right or wrong, it might not make any sense when you look at it and say, well, those 3 kids are just as good as anybody on that first place team, and they're on the last place team. That may be true. And yes, those players will find some place and something good will happen for them. But when the law of averages are, and human nature is to always start with the first place team, always start with the top teams, the second place team. And I've used this example many, many times on here. All you have to do is go to showcases. It doesn't matter if you're going to a 15 showcase, an 18 showcase, or a junior showcase. You go to the NAL showcase. Where's all the attention? All the attention is in the rank that has the first place or the top teams playing. I shouldn't say always first place. It could be second or third place, but it's always your top teams, especially the historic top teams, the ones that are always there. That's why Aberdeen, in the NAL, it's no different in the U18 level. You go and watch U18. You go watch a showcase that Shattuck's in. You go watch a showcase that some of the other programs are in that are just big name programs. There's always going to be buzz around those programs. There's always going to be more college scouts and junior scouts around those programs. It happens at Tier 3 too. If there's a Tier 3 showcase and you think you're going to get looked at and you're on the last place team, it's going to be very difficult. You've got to bang your drum a little more. What do I mean by bang your drum? We talked about this 1,000 times. We'll talk about it even more. We've always got new people watching this. One of the things you've got to do is, by banging your drum, is when you go to showcases, it's up to you to get messages out there telling people, hey, I'm playing in this showcase. Hey, here's my schedule. Remember, I do this, and many, many Division I, Division III college coaches do this. Many junior coaches do this. You've got your list, okay? I've got my list of players that I want to watch in this showcase coming up, okay? For whatever reason, my scouts put a list together. Emails have already come in. And then I've got another list over here of, and when I say emails from college coaches from other junior programs telling us players to watch. So we've got our list, our internal list of players. And let's say I've got 8 kids in the showcase that I really want to watch. And then I've got a list of kids that emailed me specifically to tell me they're in the showcase and to tell me when their games are. And maybe I've got another 10 names over here. Now, I can't guarantee you that those 10 are going to get the same amount of looks that the people that I already knew I was going there to watch are going to get, because some of these kids may have been kids I've been watching for 3 years, and I've had a relationship with them. I've talked with them, and I'm really trying to solidify the final piece with them. But I'm still going to stop in and watch these games. I'm going to watch these other kids too. Division I coaches, Division III coaches do the same thing. They go in either with an open palette saying, I'm going to watch whatever I can see. I'm going to watch the top teams. And they also go, okay, here's the kids that reached out to our program in the last few weeks to tell us about this showcase and to let us know they're here. I'm going to make sure I pop into each one of these games. That's why you'll see a Division I coach walk right over and watch a game where you go, wow, I wouldn't think he'd be watching, the 8th and the 9th place team or a U18 or U16 level, the 50th team playing the 115th place team in the nation in hockey rankings. But they do. They might only watch a few shifts, but they'll see if there's something there, and they'll make sure that they take the time. We're going to continue this, but let me catch up a little bit and see what's going on across the board and say hi to some people. Jacob, good to see you. Thank you for reaching out to me this week. Danielle in Colorado Springs, nice to see you on here. Charles in Massapequa, good to see you. We've got Rob on in Chicago. How you doing, Rob? Perry, good to see you back. Haven't seen you in a while. Vincenzo, about time you're back on. Very good to see you. Congrats to I got to put this up there just because it's kind of fun. Congrats to the North Carolina Eagles for a repeat in USA 40 and over national championships in Tampa. If you try to play in those tournaments at the national championship level, first of all, it's really, really fun. Any tournaments for older guys is fun, but there's some people that are still super serious. So congratulations. When you win one of those and you see how some of these programs are put together and how much how intense it is, that's something that's something. Congratulations on that, Jacob. I'm assuming you're on that team, Jacob. If not, tell me who's on that team. Chris, good to see you from Madison, Alabama, near Huntsville. Steve Lockwood, good to see you. It says, son attended a combine in Jersey, got several email invites, pre-draft camps afterward. He did get a couple of texts from coaches. Are the texts more genuine? Steve, what I would do, this is a strategy across the board. I'm not sure when you say you went to the pre-draft camps, if that's an all pre-draft or if that's a pre-draft for another league. Either way, it doesn't matter. What I would do is anybody that reached out email-wise or text-wise, I'd make sure I sent a thank you. I would make sure that I try to initiate more conversation there by a thank you, or even asking the question, what's the next step for me? Thank you for reaching back out to me. What would be the next step if they've already haven't spelled it out for you? Anything to spur a conversation and to try to get some direction for you. Is one more, and it's hard to say because some coaches, I'm getting better at being a text guy with players and families, but forever I'm an old school guy that either tries to call or email. If I could still send letters, I'd send letters, but nobody would. You can't do that anymore. But the bottom line is, getting an email from me is the same thing as a text. I'd prefer to do an email because I can think it out, I can spell check it. It's not two fat thumbs trying to do things. Now, younger coaches, more modern coaches, the text is their email. So it really depends. Some programs like to give you something in email form just to make it look a little bit better, just like in the old school days. You used to get, a letter of, and sometimes you still do that. I know our program still sends out letters for pre-draft and for main camps and things like that. Not all the time, but to certain groups we'll send those out too. So I wouldn't read too much into it if it's an email or a text. I would reach out aggressively to anybody that made contact with you and just make sure the door stays open on those. Good to see that Saskatchewan's on. Langham, Saskatchewan. I don't know if I've been there. Boy, oh boy. Tell me the junior hockey up in the area, and I can always tell either by the rink or by the team. So let me know what the junior hockey is in the area. Long Island, good to see you on. Jacob, not on the team, but a lot of friends are. Okay, I'll put the names up because I'm sure you're proud of these guys. There you go. Dustin, Jesse, and Matt, good job, guys. Good to see you guys with a big win. Elizabethtown, PA on, good to see you. Keith on listening, and Albany on, and we got some that are still coming in. So great that I got caught up with a lot of people popping on. We have a fantastic audience size tonight. I got to put my new official glasses on. Not sponsored yet, but I'm working on that. I figure one of these days. I really like watching I don't watch much TV anymore, but I watch a YouTube guy that does, he's kind of a musicologist. He does a history of music, and it's pop music, it's country, it's pop, rock, whatever you category you want. And he calls himself the professor of rock, and every day he's got a different pair of glasses on. So, and they're not expensive. They're only like $7, but they sponsor him. So I'm like, man, I got to start getting these kind of deals going because, there's deals to be made. Me, if I got to wear a different kind of sport coat, or I got to start wearing a turtleneck with the glasses that give me more of a sophisticated look. I'll do what I got to do if there's a sponsor out there. We got to keep working towards that. Okay, anyway, Tier 3 hockey. I'm all over the place tonight. Yes, I've been drinking coffee all day. I've been working on this stuff all day. So one of the things about it, people ask me all the time, this question probably comes into my inbox this time of year, 5 times, 10 times a day. Which Tier 3 league should I be looking at? Jeff, can you tell me which league to go to? It's really, really hard because from a player perspective, the difficulty of recommending Tier 3 hockey is, the first difficulty is it limits your outs if you're still trying to ascend the ladder. What do I mean by outs? In different games or different strategies, you always want to have an out. You want to have a way to get out of a situation you're in. If you're a wrestler, if you're a boxer, if you're into martial arts, you always want to have a way to escape, or you want to have a strategy so you can ascend and move up the ladder. Tier 3 hockey, when you make that step, unless you're very strategic and careful, can limit your upward mobility. And I've said this before, that's not a secret. Statistically, once you go into Tier 3 hockey, the odds of Tier 3 hockey players making it to Tier 2 are limited. Okay, now there's ways to keep yourself more upwardly mobile. Playing in the NCDC-related teams can do it, but once again, do your homework. Just because there's a relationship between a Premier team, Elite Premier, and NCDC doesn't necessarily mean that specific team pulls a lot of players from their Premier team. Just like in the North American Hockey League, just because there's a subsidiary team, an NA3 team to a NAL team, doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be 4, 5, 8 kids moving up to that next team up the ladder. However, in those situations, at least there's a relationship. There's a way to build more of a relationship. There's a chance to get on the ice and skate with the top teams. And there's also the ability to, especially in the North American Hockey League, there's a way to get drafted or to get tendered, because it's required that a team drafts and tenders players. It's part of the mandate of the league to try to continue to flow from those areas. So if there's 29, 30 North American Hockey League teams, you're assured that there's going to be at least 30 players from that league that are going to get tendered, and there's going to be much more than that are going to get drafted, and possibly tendered too, because remember, a North American Hockey League team can garner more tenders for the NA3HL, and they can tender or get more draft picks for the NA3HL, contingent on how well they participate in events and how much of a good steward to the North American Hockey League they are. In other words, if you're out there and you're at every showcase as a program, if you're at every event, NAPHL event, NA3HL event, and your staff is prominent at those events, there is a strategy inside the North American Hockey League that rewards those teams that do well for the league, that help the league promote and grow the league. So some teams will get a couple more picks. Some teams don't get those picks. So once again, well-managed teams, well-coached teams, well-funded teams, teams with good ownership, established teams, the teams that do things right across the board are the teams that usually are the teams that stay on top. You rarely see a team that's well-managed, does everything right, stay in last place year after year after year. If they got a good coach and they're doing all the things right, it's almost impossible to stay in last place. I say that because that should tell you a lot about, there's usually a missing link when you have tier 3 teams that are in last place, or a tier 2 team or a tier 1 team in last place. There's usually something missing. And that's part of the conversation I want to have tonight is make sure that when you're looking at tier 3 programs, it's not the hype. You can't just get sold on a nice locker room. You can't get sold on a nice jersey package that looks good, or the team sweatsuit, or the team bus. All those things are wow factors for a 16-year-old kid or a 17-year-old kid or an 18-year-old kid. And they really make it difficult to look past other things or to look into other things. Having a good established coach is great. Having a good established coach with a staff that's well established, or even if it's a newer coach, because at every level, even at the Division I and Division III level, assistant coaches move on all the time. They're always trying to grow and move up the ladder. But if you've got an established program that knows how to continually grow and develop their staff and maintain, a continuity there, and it passes down to the players, that's what you want. You don't always necessarily have to have the same assistant coach, or always even the same head coach and assistant coach. But if there's a program that's developed their coaches, because you might have a good program where the assistant coach takes over for the head coach because the head coach leaves to go coach college or goes to a higher level junior, that's perfectly fine. But the general manager and the ownership should have that prepared so that it's seamless for the team and seamless for the players, that there's somebody ready to step in to continue to keep things in motion and keep things at play. But it's so much more than just coaching. At the tier 3 level, you have to look at finances and ask the tough questions when you're going through the process. What are the tough questions? How well is your team financed? Have you ever had a problem making your ice payments, or have you ever had a problem with the rink? Ask those questions. And it might sound like you're asking too much or you're pushing too hard, but you know what? It happens every year. Every year there's a junior program at the tier 3 level, especially. It very rarely happens at tier 2 anymore. and it very rarely, although it's come close a couple times at Tier 1 this last year, we've had a couple situations. Finances come into play. So you have to ask that question. Do you have any expectations that money will be tight this year? Do you have enough to cover your bus transportation, your away hotels, and what happens if you're tight? Do you take it out on the kids? And you got to paraphrase this because I'm throwing ideas out there. Hey, you don't want to see your son sharing the room with 5 other guys with 2 double beds in a room. There's got to be an assurance that no, if things are tight, it comes out of the owner's pocket. He does not start, cutting the things that were the expectations and the promises from the team. Ice time doesn't get cut for practices. Meals on the road don't get cut. The staff doesn't get cut. Everything is going to be there because when you signed up and paid for it at the beginning of the year, whatever your amount of money is, $6,000, $10,000, whatever that number is, that it's still, you paid for a product, you're going to get the full product. They don't start saying, hey, look, you got to drive to the away games now and drive home right after the game, or we're going to get 4 hotel rooms for the whole team tonight. We'll figure it out when we're there. That stuff doesn't cut it, but you got to ask those questions and ask questions of players that are 2 or 3 years ahead of you. If you're around the rink and you see that kid that's played there, if it's the local junior team, go to a practice, talk to some of the dads, get a good sense of. You'll always find the cheerleading dad. It's usually because their kid's doing well on the team, and you'll always find the dad in the middle, and you'll always find the dad or the parent that's a little disgruntled. It's the human nature of sport. So you got to triangulate that. You got to balance that. You don't listen to all of one negative side. You don't listen to all of one positive side. There is a middle ground, and there's everybody's got their own reality. So make sure you do your homework on that side. It's extremely important. So there is no way to tell, I can tell you this. It's very easy. There's guys out there like Jeff Nygaard. Jeff is a routine commentator on our discussion group. Jeff used to be the director of the EHL. He used to be the head guy at the USPHL for the NCDC. So he's been the main guy running major leagues. And he'll get on and give you some statistics more so than I do on D3. I don't have my hands wrapped around statistics on D3 like I do D1 and juniors. But when Jeff jumps on and throws you out stats, that's the guy to really pay attention to on our discussion group because he'll tell you exactly what he's done it before when we start talking. I'll say, hey, look, these 3 leagues all are pretty competitive. The NA3HL, the USPHL Premier, and the EHL. They're all good leagues. There is nothing wrong with any of those leagues, and they all produce players. And then he'll come back and go, holy. The EHL pumps out this much, and it's like 6. I think they average 5 or 6 players per team that go to Tier 3, while the other 2 leagues are a little bit or substantially less than that per team. They all produce, but just not as high as the EHL. So looking at the right league is important, but once again, it's just not being in the EHL because there's 3, 4, 5 teams that will have almost non-existent success at putting players into Division III hockey when your top 3 or 4 programs will have 8, 10, 12, and it averages out to the league gets 5 or 6, but it's all being pumped from the top. And it's the same way in the NA3HL. It's the same way in the USPHL Premier, especially in the USPHL Premier. There's probably only 15 teams, 10 teams out of those 70 or 80 teams that really have high production for D3 hockey players. Part of it's in the statistics in the standings. You can see it. You can see which teams are on top. We always talk about it. Top teams usually get more production because people go watch them. Coaches trust that if you've got a championship team or a top team in your standings, that you're going to have players that can play at their level. But you'll also see that there's teams that aren't always on top that just have all those intangibles I talked about. Good management, good funding, good coaching, everything's established. So even if they have an off year, they're still pumping players up to the next level, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Excuse me. Let's see who else has come on board. Let's see if we got any other comments coming on board. Oh, thank you. 20 miles north of Saskatoon. My boys play in the AJHL, though. Glad to hear that you're in the AJ. It's a great league. Had a chance to, I've been up there scouting many times, been up to many of the different, probably been to 50% of the barns in the AJ. Have my favorites, and I also had a son that played up in the AJ for 1 year, had a phenomenal experience. Good to see New Brunswick, Canada on, and also great to see the Sonnendeckers on from Columbus, Ohio. There's only a few people in Columbus that I'll talk to. I'll usually try to hide from as many of those Ohio people as I can. However, there's some great people there too. Great to see, John, you're on, and I hope you're picking up some good information tonight. All right, let's get into these numbers. Okay, so a document was floating around, and I'm going to pull this up for you. I'm going to try to see if I can do this the right way and pull a document up so you can see it too. And there we go. That's not the document I wanted. That's okay. We'll get there. Bear with me here for a second, folks. I'm going to find the right document. I'm going to get out of this one. Technology is not my friend tonight. I'll tell you that. I don't want the overlay document. Let's get back to camera one. There we go. Okay. Get rid of this little Jeff Colson down there. So this is the document that's been floating around. And the gentleman that puts this together is a USA Hockey volunteer. He's heavily involved with USA Hockey. So a lot of the slant on this is to give you a better understanding of the USA Hockey side of things. And this is one of a couple pages of it, but I thought this is important to take a look at this. What you're seeing here and what you're looking at here is it's the freshman class and how the freshman class breaks out and where they come from. So right off the top, you can see USHL, NUL, NCDC, prep schools, NA3HL, EHL. You see across the board where those freshmen are at and how they're doing. So I'm looking at this and I don't have a problem with, in general terms, this is an extremely valuable piece of information for most people because it shows you the percentage of the total of players, playing Division I college as freshmen. 40% of them, 39.6, you can see right there in the top in the middle, come from the USHL. 26% come from the NUL. The 6% number from the NCDC, I'm going to challenge you on that one in a second. Prep, that prep number, once again, it's a misnomer because remember, this is the last step before you jump into the number of prep players that go back to juniors for a year or two before they go into Division I college changes how you should look at prep. I'm not sure if I would put the prep number in the same category with all the junior programs. I think you have to kind of break these out separately because that makes it look like nobody goes and plays prep hockey and then moves on to play Division I hockey, which in reality, that's nowhere near the truth. It's an extremely high number, and I'll get to that in a second. The NA3HL, that's a situation where you'll see, a player pop up to Division I. In this situation, I'm pretty sure it was a goalie, and it's a goalie on a team with 4 or 5 other goalies, which is not uncommon. EHL number, I can't find the EHL player that's in Division I hockey right now that's a freshman, and I'll go through what I've done so far. The U.S. high school number, and the U.S. midget number and the U.S. college transfer numbers are all way, way off. The amount of Minnesota high school players is much, much higher than that, and I'm not sure where that fell off the table. So that's that first column under previous league affiliation. That's that first top third of the page we're looking at right up in here, or I should do it over here, right up in this area here. So then you move down to the bottom and it's got the Canadian-based leagues. Now, this is the part where I'm really confused because the BCHL is going to be on the top. The AJ is always going to be the second. They're the strongest. And this really gives you a sense. People ask me all the time, how good is the OJ? How good is the CC? Well, once again, just like prep hockey, you got to be extremely careful with this document because this would give you the sense that nobody that plays in the OJ moves on to D1. Nobody that plays in the CCHL moves on to D1. However, the CC and the OJ have a ton of kids that move on to the North American Hockey League, that move on to the USHL, move on to the AJHL across the board. So when you're looking at that number, it's a little bit of a misnomer, and you got to be very careful to say, holy smokes, the OJ and the CCHL only have 4 players. That's not really a good way. That's not a complete truth, because some of these kids took one step to the USHL or to the BC or to the North American Hockey League first before they went to D1. So they may have played 2 years in the OJ, 2 years in the CC, and then moved on. So yes, it's a final finishing step. They're not getting credit, but that's why you just have to be careful with statistics. You have to be careful with these statistics, because it does kind of buries the prep players, and it buries these OJ, CCHL kids. Now, and if anybody knows the answer to this, I can't find the SJ is Saskatchewan. I can find that. The MJ is the Maritime League. I can't find all 4 players. I can find 3 of the 4 on rosters, but keep in mind, the Maritime is not a Division I development ground. The Maritime is not a Division I development ground. What happened in this situation? This is a pandemic number. You've got players that went back because the BC or the border, they had issues with the team they were playing on. They were either playing AJ or BC. They were from the east side of Canada, the east coast of Canada, and they just said, I've already got my Division I commitment. I'm just going to stay home and play. So a lot of the numbers you see here with these lower level leagues, yes, there is one player that appealed, got his OHL, he got taken out of his penance for playing in the OHL and was able to go on and play Division I. And the college transfer, I don't understand this, because if you're a college transfer, you're not a freshman. So I don't know why that number is on there. And it doesn't skew the numbers much. The European numbers look fine. My only contention is, if you look at this in just general terms, and you take a look at this document right off the bat, you're looking at it and you're saying, oh, there's certain areas that you just don't have that many people. They don't have the ability to move on and progress like the CC and like the OJ. So my thought right off the bat is, be careful with that document. Great information, great to look at, and great to get a sense of things, but I definitely would not put too much merit into that across the board. Does that help at all with that document? I know of a lot of you. I had more comments coming in on that document than any other document or anything on social media in the last 2 years. I had phone calls, texts, direct messages. In fact, a few of you that are on tonight were direct messaging me on that. So I thought I'd share some information with you that would kind of give you a sense. I'm not going to put this information into document form because this is pandemic era still. And what I mean by that is, if I put my numbers out statistically, it's going to do things like this does, which is going to be skewed because of the pandemic. I can tell you right now, I don't see the numbers for a couple of leagues the same way. I'm looking at now I only went through so far the Atlantic, the Big Ten, the Hockey East, and the CCHA. Now, I know I still have a really big Division I league on the East Coast that I haven't touched yet, but my NCDC numbers so far, just for all those leagues, is seven freshmen coming in. Now, that means that the other league, if these statistics are true, where it says the NCDC has 21 players, that means that one league has 14 players, one East Coast league. Now, it's very possible that the one league does have. I'm sure they're going to have 4 to 10. I thought that number was going to be a little high, especially since that league produces total fresh recruits, fresh Division I commitments. It's usually 10 or 12 a year. So, yes, some of these teams are stocked full of kids with Division I talent. The New Jersey Hitmen always have, Boston Junior Bruins always have high numbers. Now, here's why I'm worried about this. If you remember last year at this time, Well, it was going into the NHL draft and right after the NHL draft. We started seeing the USPHL just pumping the tires of how many kids they had on the NHL watch list. And then when the draft came out, you also saw the NCDC pumping their tires on how many players got drafted in the NHL. Well, it was true. They did have a handful of players that got drafted into the NHL. Digging deeper into that, what was the cause and what was the reason why you had all these high-end players that you only see playing in the Big Ten, you only see playing in Hockey East, usually playing for the top teams. Why were you seeing them skating in the NCDC? Well, it's because all the prep programs last year shut down. And when that prep league shut down and completely shut down, those players, either because they were recruited or because they were looking for a home and reached out, they found local junior teams to skate for that happened to be in the NCDC. And that was a very convenient way to jump in. And because they're non-sanctioned leagues, they could bounce in and out. They could play a couple games here. It's a little bit more easy to play in the NCDC than going into the NAHL or going into the USHL, where USA Hockey's very rigid on how that happens and moving paperwork back and forth. And if those guys were playing in the USHL or the NAHL before they were in prep or while they were in prep or with a U18 team, it got very convoluted. So they just jumped into the NCDC. Some of those kids only played 2 games, but the NCDC took credit, or their media push took credit for those players, even though they only played a handful of games. They pumped it out. Hey, we've got, I can't remember what the number was. It was 4 or 5 guys that were NHL draft picks that came out of the league last year. It is what it is. It's marketing. Good on them for finding a way to be creative enough to find those players and bring them in, and good on them to market it. But that's where the buyer has to beware. You have to understand that they really didn't develop there. Some of those kids only played most of them only played a handful of games, and they only did it because their prep program, their powerhouse prep program, was shut down. Does that make sense? I hope it does. And that's why looking at these kind of documents, when you see these numbers, you just have to be careful. The Maritime League does not have a consistent 4 players that go straight from the Maritime League into Division I college hockey. It's not there. Most Division I programs, most junior programs don't recruit or scout in the Maritime. Now, once in a while, you'll get a call from an advisor, from a coach, from somebody that says, hey, there's one kid out there you got to take a look at. And you do. You take a look at that one kid. But as a league, it serves a purpose. It's a good league for what it is, but it's just not a avenue. So if you're looking at that and saying, hey, I've got a shot to play up there next year and I want to play D1, maybe that's not the avenue to take if you're heading that way. So, Andrew, you just threw up the comment here. It's rare that we get a D1 from Atlantic Canada. Yeah, nothing wrong with the league. It's just that it's just not a highly. I can't get there. It's from where I'm at in Western New York. I got to get a sleigh, some reindeer. I got to get a horse and buggy. I'm kidding a little bit, snowmobile. But it's very difficult to drive there. It's very difficult to fly there to see some of these areas. Now, the CC has a little bit of the same problem with some of their teams that are a little bit more towards the east of the province. But as you get more to the west, you start getting towards that Toronto-centric area, easier access. You can fly in, you can drive in pretty easy from Michigan, from Ohio, from New York. It's easier to get to. So hopefully you understand what I'm saying there. Let me throw you some stats. I think there's some really interesting things to know. First of all, in general terms, there's 10 teams in the Atlantic. Remember, I only went through 4 leagues today. 10 Division I teams in the Atlantic. Hockey East has 11 teams. Big Ten has 7 teams. CCHA has 8 teams. Okay, so the Big Ten's the smallest of the leagues of the ones I went through. Now, I know I still got to go through the NCHC, a couple independent teams, and I know I've got to go through the ECAC still. Okay, got 2 leagues to go through and some independent teams. I'll get that done. But this amount of work that I go through to fact check this stuff and is going through each and every roster and pulling up each and every player, what year, what country they're from, where they played, where they came out of youth from, and how many games and what kind of statistics they had this year. Once I get it off the team roster, then I turn around and I go to Elite Prospects and check that. Then I go to the league website and I check, or the USCHO website, and I check that website to make sure they're all verified and they have the same information. And 98% of it is accurate across the board. You'll run across the glitch. Once in a while you'll see a kid that was a walk-on, came in the second half of the season. Usually this happens with goalies where they want to add a fourth or a fifth goalie to the roster for whatever reason, and he'll come out of nowhere. It'll be a kid. There's a Division I player that played U18 for a below average program that's on a D1 roster. He's a goalie. He's also a goalie with 4 goalies ahead of him. Okay, so that happens. Good for him. God bless him. Glad he got a chance to play college hockey. So those things happen. Now, of those 4 leagues, respectively, 53 freshmen in the Atlantic, 67 in Hockey East. The Big Ten has 38, and the CCHA has 54. Those numbers are drastically down for freshmen. Drastically down. Okay, we're talking about, and on the stat sheet here for freshmen, you see there's a total of 373 freshmen, but you notice the amount of players in the league. There's 2,500 players that are playing D1 hockey, according to this. Okay, total teams in the league. I'm assuming that's what it is when they show that 373. You got just between the Null and the USHL, you got about 250 kids. So you add all those numbers up. That's your 373 freshmen. Think about that. If there's 2,500, that's less than 20% of the league coming in. It used to be you had to be on par with your freshman class coming in with at least 25%, 25%. And it used to be used to load up with more freshmen because you knew there'd be attrition. Kids would fail out of school. Kids would transfer out of school. Kids would get hurt. Kids would lose interest. You always had a larger freshman class, and then the numbers retracted. Now, I want to go through and just kind of give you a sense of some numbers that I pulled up, and this is really telling about 2 things right now that we're dealing with, and that's why these statistics have to be very, very carefully used. The amount of freshmen, and let me get to the right page here. What I want to really show you is, or talk to you about, is the amount of freshmen versus seniors. And on one of these pages, I have it written down. I just got to find the right page because I got page after page after page. Okay, Hockey East. Let's just start with Hockey East. And in every case, remember, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 teams in Hockey East. Some of the biggest powerhouse teams in college hockey are in Hockey East. You've got teams. BC has 6 freshmen, 9 seniors. BU, 4 and 4. UConn, 5 freshmen, 9 seniors. Maine, 3 freshmen, 9 seniors. UMass, 7 freshmen, 8 seniors. You see a pattern here? Providence, same thing. Vermont, it's equal. 2 things have happened here, and we've got an inversion that for the 2000 class, the 2001s, maybe even getting into the 2002s, it's crushing that entry-level player, that freshman coming in. Don't get me wrong, there's still freshmen. There's still 2000s on each of these teams, but the superstar 2000 that was an NHL draft pick that's been on the team for 2 years already doesn't count with that 2000 class, that normal progression out of juniors, which happened last year. The 01s are stepping out right now. And my fear is if we see these kind of numbers next year, we're really going to see some wacky, wacky stuff going on with Division I hockey and trailing into Division III. These numbers are so inverted, and I'm not even throwing in another number. The amount of grad transfers you throw into here, every one of these teams, every single one of these teams has grad transfers, anywhere from 2 to 5 grad transfers on each one of those Hockey East teams. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means if you've got transfers coming in that don't have to sit out a year, and you've got the super seniors, which is why those senior numbers are so high, meaning kids that get 5 years instead of just 4 of eligibility. That means the teams now, the junior class, the kids that were juniors moving into their senior year, they can stay around for 2 years as senior. In other words, the current senior class, they can stay on as a grad student or they can stay on as a super senior for 1 more year. If this continues all the way through the next 4 years, it can upset the amount of normal kids that move in to the freshman class, where we're seeing these drastically low numbers of incoming freshmen. Does that make sense? Or am I boring you? Because to me, this is fascinating stuff. I really, really enjoy, talking about and seeing these kind of stats. Let me see if you got any comments on this. Throw comments up there if this is helping you or making sense. Big Ten, Michigan State, 3 freshmen, 6 seniors. Michigan, 5 freshmen, 7 seniors, 2 grad students. So it's 5 against 9 as far as the ratio goes. Notre Dame, 6 freshmen, 11, 7 seniors, 4 grad students. Ohio State, 6 freshmen, 5 seniors, which sounds better. That's getting closer to the normal mix. You normally see a freshman class a little bit bigger, and a senior class is usually your smaller core on any team. It normally is like a pyramid. You start with a large base, and it works up over the years. And the other thing that we haven't talked about, another reason why you have attrition is the coach could have made a bad call on a player or 2 in the freshman class, and then as he recruits the next year, he's already recruiting because he knows he's got 2 players that should not be on the team that he's going, hey, look, this isn't working out. Either your performance because you're choosing not to play that way, or we just made a bad call on you and we're not going to play you. That's the reality of college sports. If you're not up to snuff, they can replace you. There's no guarantees on that. So going through this, Penn State's got a pretty good ratio, 6-3 on the freshmen over seniors. Wisconsin, upside down, 7-9. Minnesota, just about average. Now, there's 2 leagues. That's the Big Ten and that's the Atlantic. You always expect to see younger players in the Big Ten, Hockey East, NCHC than the Atlantic. You always do. You'll see that the Atlantic tends to pull players at the last minute. One of the things you can see from the Atlantic that is a telltale of that is how many null players they got. The Atlantic leads all Division I leagues with 21-9 freshmen that came directly from the null. To give you an idea, the Big Ten had 1, Hockey East had 9, and the CCHA had 18. So the null are older players, and they usually play out their last year of junior, so they're 21 going in as freshmen. Big Ten doesn't do that. The Big Ten, where are their players coming from? National Training and Development Program and the USHL. That's where they're getting the core group of their players. Hockey East the same way, with a little bit of push from the null and the BCHL. But you don't get much BCHL action in the Big Ten. You're getting that National Training and Development Program, and the USHL is filling the coffers. So help me out on this. Tell me if this makes sense. Tell me if this kind of talk, because I want to go into some numbers deeper on this. Why am I not putting slides out on this? Why am I not doing this as a graph? Is because, once again, if I do that, somebody's going to look at this and they're going to run with my numbers as religion on this, and I don't want that. I don't want people to say, see, last year these were the statistics. This is a pandemic year. I'm hoping this is an anomaly. That's why the document I showed you earlier, I'm so concerned about, because when people look at that and go, oh, nobody's going from prep. Now, I broke down every Hockey East player of where they came before they were in Hockey East. Boston College, prep, Tier 1 elite, prep, Tier 1 elite, prep, BU, prep, HPHL, prep, UConn, prep, AYHL, which, most likely they were affiliated with some kind of prep team, and 2 kids, and the Canadian kids I did not do because most of them come up through a traditional system. Minnesota High School, which these numbers don't, come out of here the way they should. But the prep numbers, every single team has, UMass, 3 prep players, Merrimack, 4 or 5 prep players, 4. You look at New Hampshire, prep, 4 players right there. You look at Northeastern, prep. 5 of their freshmen coming in had prep experience. Now, after prep, they went to the BCHL. After prep, they went to the National Training and Development Program. After prep, they went to National Training and Development Program. After prep, USHL. After prep, one went to the Boston Junior Bruins and the NCDC. Now, the reason I bring that up is because you would never think that prep, looking at the stat sheet, you'd never think that prep was an option. Prep is extremely important to Division I college hockey, and just as all the other junior leagues are, just like Minnesota high school is. But you look at this here, and you look at these stats where it says U.S. high school freshmen that coming out of U.S. high school, there's a ton of Minnesota high school players that went and played 1 year in the USHL and are on playing Division I college hockey now. It's viable. High school hockey is viable in many parts of the United States, and that's not showing up in this, and that's why I'm just very concerned about this. So give me your comments. Tell me a little bit about it. Well, let's see what this one says. Let's see if I can pop this up here. It says, the 2004 and younger birth years have the advantage because the teams will need to fill a ton of spots the year they age out of junior hockey. Absolutely. I'm concerned now that maybe even the 04s are going to get pulled into this. We know that the 2000 class, as far as the amount of players that would normally go into Division I hockey, the numbers shrank exponentially. I mean, it's not exponential. It's verifiable. I could go back and grab the last few years before this and tell you, but I can tell you now that if this is a true number, that 2,500, you're probably looking at least at 25 to 30% of that number should be freshmen. Across the board should be freshmen. Logical. You want a larger base at the beginning, and then you want to grow from there. So 2 things are killing it. It's not. See, here's why I'm not so sure on that 04 thing. If you go through these rosters and you look at the amount of grad transfers, because remember this portal thing is opened up now, it's changed the whole world. The portal numbers are just as disturbing to me as the actual number. Grad transfers, Boston College 5, BU 4. This is graduate players that finish their 4 years and stay for 1 year, or transfer and play at the new school. But it's 5, 4, 2, 3, 5, 2, 2, 4, 4, 4, 4. That's just Hockey East. You go into the Big Ten. The numbers aren't as big in the Big Ten, and I'm surprised there. I thought the Big Ten would gather more of the portal, but I guess part of it is when you're getting NHL draft picks coming in as freshmen, you're not as concerned about the portal, but they still have. Everybody's got grad transfers and transfers. 1, 4, 2, 2, 2, 2. So those are taking the spot. If a kid's it used to be, if you were concerned that you weren't getting playing time and you were concerned about it, you had to sit out a year. That dissuaded you from transferring because you had to sit out a year if you transferred to another school. That's been eliminated now. Now you can just go the next year and play. The second part of that is you could go right away to a D3 school. So it used to be if you were disgruntled and you were at Maine or New Hampshire or Boston University, and you just weren't happy because you weren't getting ice time. Let's say in a 30-game year, you were getting you got 10 games in, and you're getting 4th line time. You would transfer to Norwich. You would transfer to Middlebury. You would transfer to Geneseo because you could instantly play. So now those D1 drop downs, they still happen, but the quality of the drop down to D3 hockey is drastically changed. Because those kids can just move over to any D1 program they want. If I played at Michigan, just because it's going to help me in recruiting, if I'm any other school that's at a lesser league than the Big Ten, and I'm a program that normally doesn't have Big Ten talent, and I got a kid that played at Michigan that wants to come onto my roster, I'm not really too concerned about it. It's just like if I'm a junior coach and I'm coaching Tier 3, and a Shattuck kid wants to come play for me and I'm a tier 3 coach, I'm going to grab that kid in a heartbeat, because now on my roster, I've got a Shattuck kid or a Culver kid or a Victory Honda kid or a Little Caesars kid or Mount St. Charles, the bigger names, okay? I want them on my roster to make my roster look better, to make us look better and more solidified in our recruiting process. So college football, if there's an Alabama transfer, you don't care if he played much or not. If you got an Alabama kid on your team, that looks good for the other recruits. Hey, Alabama kids come to us when they're not, things aren't going good at Alabama, they come to us. So I hope you understand what I'm saying with this. It's upsetting the apple cart in two ways. The extra year, so the 04s might survive that part of it, but this grad transfer push and the ability to have free-flowing rosters like this with no there's no pause button that used to happen that would actually make a kid think twice about going D1 to D1 on the transfer. As a player, as an individual player, it's great. Is a player that's not in the league yet into Division I hockey, is a player coming up from 16s and 18s and just starting out in juniors, right now the ground should be shaking. It should be a trembling fear coming from all the people on just how much this is going to continue and how much it's going to be prevalent over the next several seasons. Hopefully that helps. All right, here's a question. And this is a good one, Robert. What is the next step to take coming out of New York State high school hockey? Look, it's once again program-based. A kid coming out of Nichols, a kid coming out of Bishop Timon out of the Buffalo area, a kid coming out of maybe McQuaid out of the Rochester area, and some of those programs like that, and some of the top programs in the downstate, they're going to have it much easier moving into juniors because the Timons and the Nichols programs are all doing a really good job of staying connected to the USHL, staying connected to the North American Hockey League and the NCDC. So part of it is what program you come out of. Just like every time I say the same thing, the teams on top are the teams that normally get. And once again, what's the common thread with those programs I mentioned? Usually consistency on coaching, tradition with their program of always being a top program. Even if they've got an off year, people know they'll bounce back and they'll be back up there. Coaching's usually solidified and usually no budgetary issues. And they're trying to play, a broader scale program. Playing for lesser programs, if I'm just on an average high school team, it can be done. But normally, even if you're playing high school, it's still a matter of getting out there and getting. If you're in your senior year and you still haven't opened up those doors, the options for Tier 2 and Tier 1 are slight unless you've already opened those doors because you have no way of showing anybody unless you can get that video out and get tape out to people. It's tough. So, Robert, throw me up a DM, and I'd like to just know more about the situation, what year you're in. You don't have to do that publicly, but shoot me a DM. I can probably, give you a little bit more insight with a little more detail, but I don't want to, put you on the spot by asking you to give me all your detail right here. But it has a lot to do with, how competitive your team is, how competitive the schedule you've played, how well connected your coach is to progressing players to the next level. In other words, do you consistently have players like, I'm just using Nichols as an example. Nichols in Buffalo, which I do not have an affiliation with. I used to coach McQuaid here in Rochester, but that was years ago. We're talking now 20 years. It's been a long, long time. But anyway, back to Nichols. They'll have 4 or 5 kids that'll play USHL, NOL. Might have a couple kids go to the NCDC, and then they'll have some Tier 3 players too. But that's because they just consistently, are building relationships and reaching out. So a lot of it has to do with your coach and how much he's actually building those conduits and how good your program is. And then, of course, your talent always comes into play. If you're talented enough and all those things, talent alone doesn't get you into the NOL, doesn't get you to the USHL if you're coming out of high school hockey. Somebody has to be beating that drum for you. Somebody's got to be helping you progress up there. They just don't come and find you. You go to a state championship in New York, You'll watch there's 2 levels of New York state championships, pretty much an A and B, tier 1, tier 2. I'm not sure what they call it now, but it used to be, it was held every year. It was held in Utica. So Utica's got a big stadium. All the local fans from each program come out to watch the state championships. You go into the coaching room as a scout. You look at the coaching sheet, and there's a couple local, either low-level D3 programs, or back in the day there used to be a couple that were the 2-year college programs. One of them was Morrisville. That's now a 4-year program. They'd be there, but you wouldn't see anybody else, and that's the way it's been for quite a while now. So it's a tough go. Glad to hear this comment that came up. Thank you for the explanation. My son is an 08. It's not always not always rosy, but these are things to be thinking about this. Hey, John B. from Montreal, thanks for saying hi. Let me know if you want me to go on a little bit. I've got many, many different ways to break these down and to share more information with you. I think I'll share one more piece with you, and this is probably one of the more interesting pieces to me. When you watch my videos talking about, I hate not my hockey rankings. I'm a big, big fan of my hockey rankings. Once the season gets progressing and there's enough games in the engine, they spit out pretty accurate information. Personally, there was one year where I went to the national championships with a U16 team. We were the number 2 team in the nation. We played the number 1 team in the nation. My hockey rankings, 1 and 2 played each other in the national championship, and they said they were a goal better than us. We lost 3-2 in that final game. Now, part of it's poor coaching probably on my end. Probably a lot of other factors came in, but statistically, I've watched it time in and time out work. I'm not. This has nothing to do with my hockey rankings. This has to do with subjective polls. Okay, subjective polls are, the CJHL is famous for it. They put out a poll for the whole CJHL, and it's a woke poll. Everybody's included. Everybody gets a medal. The BCHL gets 1 or 2 teams in the top 20, and the SIJHL gets a couple teams in the top 20, because what they do is they take the top team in each of those leagues and they throw them all in a top 20. It's not a top 20. Not when you look at the amount of players that are NHL draft picks, NHL draft watch list kids, and D1 commits. When the BCHL is loaded with 10 or 12 D1 commits with a couple guys on the watch list and a couple draft picks already, and you're trying to compare that to an SIJHL team that will not have any of those things, how is there a comparison? And that could be the 4th place team in the BCHL or the 5th place team in the BCHL. So it's not a fair comparison when you're looking at numbers like that. So when you're looking at Division I leagues, there's a hierarchy in Division I leagues too. For example, the Atlantic, the newest league, still in the development process. And why do I say that? Well, you just go back over the last 10 years. And I don't know exactly when it was, but it was about 10 years ago when this, when the Atlantic developed. RIT, Mercyhurst, Bentley, who else we got there? Sacred Heart. A lot of these programs were not Division I programs. And when this whole league was put together, the Atlantic, across the board, I'm looking at, let me look at the whole league. AIC, RIT, Niagara was Division I. They've been Division I for a while. But Army used to play a Division III schedule across the board. Bentley, Canisius jumped D1 fairly quickly before the rest of these programs. Holy Cross jumped up. Mercyhurst was a D3 program. RIT was a D3 program. Sacred Heart was a D3 program. All these programs were D3 programs just a short period of time ago. So once this league went to Division I, that was the first step. But then again, the NCAA did not give that league the ability to use the D1 ace in the hole, which is scholarships. So they were D1 in name. It was a D1 league in name, but unless you were an Army or Air Force, which has a built-in scholarship program, you didn't have the ability to give scholarships out like the rest of the D1 teams do. In fact, only up until recently did the NCAA finally get all of the teams there, and it was a stair-step process. It was a percentage, and I don't know, this part, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but they were able to give partial scholarships to a point, and maybe it moved up to 9 kids were able to get scholarships, and it went to 12, then it went to 15, then it moved up to the max of 18. That only happened in the last few years where they moved up to the full, scope of 18 scholarships for Division I athletes that they could give out at the schools, except for RIT. RIT fell in a clause that didn't allow them to do it. It just recently got fixed. So now at least RIT gets to play on the same level playing field. So now you think about that. You're playing against all these other teams that have full scholarships. You can't give a full scholarship. You know how hard you got to work as a staff to be competitive in that league? It just amazes me that RIT does as well as they've done over the last few years with that situation. So the Atlantic is still in the infancy of growing into, full-fledged D1 hockey. Doesn't mean anything except for the new kids on the block into the game. It's no different than watching some of these new programs that struggle to move in when they come in, the Long Islands, the Lindenwoods maybe, some days the St. Thomas's. They've got to grow into it, but at least now these other programs have full scholarships. That league had no full scholarships. So why I bring that up is Atlantic. Remember, let's talk about, in junior we look at D1 scholarships or D1 commitments to kind of get a gauge of what level the league's at. Well, let's use in Division I hockey, let's use NHL draft picks is our threshold to good hockey or better hockey, I should say. It's not good or bad. It's where the real talent is at. The Atlantic, as a whole league, across the league, one goaltender is an NHL draft pick. One goaltender. In Hockey East, the freshmen coming in, of those 67 freshmen coming in, 17 of them are already NHL draft picks. Think about that. 17 already. There's 76 total NHL draft picks in that league in Hockey East. 17 of the freshmen coming in are already there. So you can see there's a hierarchy to the leagues. Now, the Big Ten, 38 freshmen coming in, 17 of those freshmen. So half the amount of freshmen coming in compared to the Hockey East program, but 17 of them, half of their players that are incoming freshmen are NHL draft picks. That's mind-blowing. Think about that. It's a Division I league that half of the incoming freshmen are already NHL draft picks. I mean, it's good enough that you've got 15%, 20% of your in the Hockey East coming in, but just mind-blowing. So where does that fit in? You look at the CCHA, and I just did a brief number. I could be off one or two on these, so don't hold my feet to the fire. But none of the freshmen coming into the CCHA have, and I think there's 4 to 6 kids in the whole CCHA that have a draft pick, NHL draft pick, or they're drafted. So you can see there's a hierarchy of where you want to play if you're going to play against the best competition, if you're going to play at the highest of the high. So does that make sense? I hope that helps, because when you're looking at these leagues and you're looking at, I really like the Big Ten schools. Everybody does. Everybody likes Hockey East, okay? But to get into one of these schools that literally, if you're not an NTDP kid or you're not going to be a draft pick, it's a flip of the coin. If you're a great USHL or a great player coming out of the BCHL or wherever you're coming out of, it's very, very difficult to get into these leagues. Think about that. If you're not an NHL draft pick going into the Big Ten, there was only 17 players, of the 38 freshmen, 17 had draft picks. So there's only 21 kids that were not NHL draft picks going into that league this year as freshmen. Amazing. Just amazing to me. What do you think? Tell me what you're seeing on this. Okay, here's one. So the question came up here, not hockey related. What's behind you, the contraption with the steering wheel? It's actually a yoke for a simulator. My wife and I are pilots. That's our simulator for flying. So when I was working on my instrument for flying, there's a lot of things you do just to get proficiency. So when you go up and fly, you practice there. It makes it easier when you go in the aircraft. So that's what that is. I can move that out. If it becomes annoying, I'll move it out next time so you guys don't see that. But thanks for asking on that one. Montreal, Quebec-san, good to see you. Here's a one that comes in. It says, what's your opinion on junior B hockey in Canada, specifically the Gojo, and how would you compare it? So great question. I think I would start with the Gojo, but let's also look at the bigger picture of the CJHL. People ask all the time, where does the CJHL fit? Is it Tier 2 hockey? The answer is yes, it's comparable to USA Tier 2 hockey. And yes, it's comparable to USA Tier 3 hockey. It's contingent on which league you're in, and the same thing with the Gojo. The Gojo, for those that don't know, is a league that's pretty much from is the Gojo the old Golden Horseshoe? I believe it is. I think it's the old Golden Horseshoe League, but it runs pretty much from all the way over in Sarnia, maybe south of Sarnia down into Windsor, from that metro area all the way around to Niagara, and kind of envelopes the lower half of that Ontario basin across there on the southwest. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. For those of you who know the actual landscape and geography of the Gojo a little bit better than me, but that league for years has been a productive league for hockey players. Once again, contingent on the team you're playing for, that gets you up into other leagues. Either moves you up into a higher level CJ team, moves you up into a null team, or moves you into NCDC or into a higher level Tier 3 team. The CJHL across the board is not comparable to the null. We see that by the statistics. The CJHL in pieces, there are teams, and I've told you this before, right now the team that's the hottest when you go through all these numbers is in the AJ. Two teams. Well, one is always hot, which is Brooks. Brooks is as good as anybody in the USHL. They're as good as anybody in the North American Hockey League. If you don't believe me, watch their production year over year after year. Look where they end up in the national championships. Look where they end up in their league every year. The other team that's hot up there right now is Okotoks in the AJHL. Those teams are absolutely comparable with our Tier 2 programs, our Tier 1 programs. You get into the bottom level of the AJ and NCDC level, and right in there, your bottoms usually are your Olds, Grizzlies, and Calgary. The Gojo can't compete with the Null, can't compete with the USHL, but the Gojo has programs that are better run than many Tier 3 programs. It is a viable opportunity. If you're looking to progress, though, you have to go to a program that wants you to progress, because there are Gojo programs out there that want to covet their players and they don't want you to leave. They want you to be a 3-year player for them. Then there's other programs that understand that, if they get great talent out and they pump them up to another level, maybe they get them out to the AJ, maybe they get them to the BC, maybe they get them to the Null. They know that that's going to help them in their recruiting, and it becomes perpetual for them. They get 1-year players, maybe 2, and they push them out and move them up to the next level. So that's where your homework's done. That's where you get into elite prospects. That's where you get onto the team websites and you start doing some homework on where those players are coming from. So, all right, we've been going for a while now. I hope this is help. Thanks for the comment. So interesting. Let's see what else we got going here. When seeking an advisor, what should one look for and what questions should one ask? Boy, oh boy, I got a ton of videos out there on that. And we've got, there's a few, we've got a couple of these live streams that over the last few weeks, they're titled, they say we talk about advisors on. Once again, it's so subjective on picking an advisor, because it's like hiring a lawyer. If I've got a lawyer that I want to hire for a slip and fall, it's not the guy I want working on my taxes nor is it the guy I want doing a major corporate merger. Okay, and advisors work the same way. A guy that's great working with Western Canada players may not be so hot working with getting players from prep to from Western Canada into U.S. prep, from U.S. prep into juniors, and from juniors to D1. So it's contingent on where you're at, how much you want to spend, and what you're trying to achieve. There are some people that just need to get somebody out there honking the horn a little bit for them. There's other advisors that are really good at putting a package together, mental, physical, summer, strength and conditioning, and they go through all of it. Now you pay for it, but the reason why it's very difficult for me to hire or to tell you who to hire as an advisor is everybody's got a different situation. It's like, orthopedic surgeon versus an ear, nose, and throat doctor. They all are literally, first of all, there's a lot of them that just will take anybody. There are people that and the reason why you've got to use word of mouth and you've got to go on Google, you got to look these guys up. I'll show you something. This might help you. If you go, most people don't know this, and if you go to Elite Prospects, let me see if I can I'll just pull up University of Michigan, if I can spell it well. I'm going to pull this up. I'll put it on the screen in a second here. Let me get it up first, and then I'll show it to you. Okay, so the University of Michigan, we know that most of these guys have agents. I'm going to pull up a kid. Let's just pull up anybody on this roster. Oh, here's a kid. Maybe you've heard of him. His name's Luke Hughes. Sounds like a good name. Sounds like a kid that can play hockey. Okay, if I'm looking at Luke Hughes and I'm waiting for it to load because I've got so much running on it right now, it's just running a little slow. He is, it doesn't show who he's represented by, probably because he doesn't really need representation. Let me pull up another kid. I'm just trying to give you, I'm going to show you a way to get into a lot of these. Better yet, let me pull up this screen and I'm going to show you, a different way of doing this. Okay, so let me grab this screen here, and I'm going to go into Elite Prospects. And on Elite Prospects, if I go up the top, you can see on the very top, you've got the ability to pull up players across the board. You've got abilities to pull up drafts. All this information is available to you. Now, one of the things that most people don't know is there is an agent portal up here. And if I click on agent portal and I'm in premium, which I did not sign in, so I don't have my premium access, but you can see what starts here. If I was signed in with my premium right now, I would have access to all the different agencies and family advisors that are on Elite Prospects. So you actually have access to a lot more than you think by actually going on here and clicking on here. Now, not only do you get to be able to pull up, and I don't even know who I just pulled up. See, it wants me to sign in. I'll sign in here. Hopefully you guys didn't see my password. I don't want to. Okay, AMA Sports Agencies out of Sweden. This is not one that you're probably going to look at because you're not playing out of Sweden, nor are you looking to play in the pro leagues. But what it does is it shows you their whole roster of people. Now you can see they're all Swedish players with a few others, a French player. But if you pull up a Canadian advisor or you pull up an American advisor, it'll show you the book of clients. So you can look for the like level of player that they're dealing with. Now, not every advisor's on here because a lot of advisors talk the talk, but don't follow it up with walking the walk. They don't have a stable of clients. So you got to be careful with that. One of the questions you might ask is, hey, I don't see you or any of your clients on Elite Prospects. Why is that? Some of them have legitimate reasons. They don't put their players or they don't represent players on Elite Prospects. And some of them just don't know how to do it. They don't know how to get their name out there and to show that. So one of the things you can do right away is jump on Elite Prospects. You got to be a premium member, and you can scroll through and start putting together a good list. But Google, word of mouth. And just like I mentioned, I'm a pilot earlier. Anytime I fly, there's always what kind of aircraft I fly. It's mission appropriate, meaning what's the mission I want to do? If I want to take a family trip, I want a plane that can fly 1,000 miles, not just 300 miles, and probably something a little bit more stable. when I'm hiring an advisor, it's got to be mission appropriate. I don't want, a big, huge named agency. I want a family advisor that can get the job done at the level that I'm at. The other thing is, make sure when you're dealing with people hear me say this all the time. If an advisor gives you advice on the first conversation and tells you what they can do for you in the first conversation when you first initiate, some interaction, that's not the advisor you want. If they already start blabbing off about which colleges they can get you into and what they're going to do for you and what team you should be playing for on the first conversation, check them off, move to the next one. You should hear, I'm not sure I can handle you. I think I've got enough players. The good ones are going to say, let me look at you and spend a few days looking at some tape and get a sense from some of the coaches in your league about where you fit. I don't know anything about you. It's too soon for me to tell you if I can take you on as a client right now. Those are the answers you want to hear from these guys. Now, I don't have an affiliation with any advisor. I don't get compensated by mentioning names, but I can tell you we've got 400, 500, advisors that belong to our discussion group. So just be careful there and take your time. A lot of times, I can tell you right now, I'm in the North American Hockey League. Less than 50% of the players that we're bringing in have advisors, and we're still able to connect with them. We were still able to find, because, if you're in the right, if you're playing in the right league, it's inherent that you'll get spotted. In other words, if you're in the HPHL, if you're in the Beast, if you're playing Minnesota high school, if you're playing on a team that gets in front of people and you're talented, you don't have issues. If you're trying to move up and you're in an obscure area or you're not on the top of your roster, meaning you're a mid-level player, it's going to be more difficult. And or even a top third, but on the bottom of the top third, that's where you want an advisor. And I can understand hiring advisors. There's a need for advisors for certain players, but just be careful on that. I know I didn't give you the full answer you wanted, but hopefully that helped a little bit on that answer. So. Okay, that's me. I'm not going to try to fix this little screen right now because we're coming to an end. Anyway, good. I'm so glad you said that, Andrew. It's not annoying. I just wanted to know what it was. I'm just curious. Good, because it'd be a pain in the ass for me to move that. Okay. All right. Thanks for all the comments. I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed this. Please, if you're watching this on YouTube, jump on, like, and subscribe. If you haven't been to YouTube yet, you got to get over to YouTube. That's where we've got all of our content. You can scroll through Junior Hockey Advisor on there, and you can find all kinds of, you go down the rabbit hole. Go down and find some of the old videos. You can find out how drafts work. You can find out how players that get drafted into the USHL, what happens to them. You can find out how the tender process works. You can find out U18 versus junior hockey. All the things we talk about, there's usually a video on it. All of our old live streams there. Jump on, have fun, find some good videos, enjoy yourself on that. If you haven't been to our discussion group, jump on our discussion group on Facebook. It's always fun. There's always informative information on there. We try to keep solicitations out so you can ask questions. You shouldn't get harassed, even though there's a lot of advisors. There's also general managers from the BCHL. There's general managers from the NAL. There's general managers from the USHL that are members of our group. So you, by asking questions, a lot of those answers come back to you either, by proxy, they'll DM me and I'll, throw an answer out. Or sometimes you'll actually get one of the general managers or the coaches will jump on and respond directly. Not that often, but it does happen. So hopefully this helps you. Please support us by liking us. Please support us by jumping on that YouTube page. It'll be big help for us. Have a great night, everybody. Next week, I'm not sure if we're going live or not. My wife and I are going to be on the West Coast. We're going to be doing some flying in the mountains. And so I'm not sure if we'll actually get a broadcast. I am going to take my equipment with me while we're out there, but I just don't know if it'll fit in. We'll see. Have a great night. Take care.